Welcome back. This is an ET Now special budget and India Inc. And we've got a very special panel debating the reform agenda that Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee needs to have. Mr. Habil Khurakiwala, what is the most important reform call that Pranab Mukherjee needs to take and needs to take it now?
I think the infrastructure area is, which was being mentioned earlier. And this is hanging fire for a very long time, the power, the roads, the ports. And these are structural solutions also simultaneously to be found out. Because what we find is in many of these areas like roads, both aspects of the speed at which it should be done and the quality aspect is also there. And now the environment concerns are being raised in some of these areas. So I think government has to put all these together and find a comprehensive solution to get this infrastructure moving. And it is very essential we do it now and urgently.
Right, Mr. Mittal, I want to come to you now because one of the big reforms that everybody is expecting is on the FDI front. We've been talking about FDI and retail for a while now. Bharti Group has been very keen that the government allow FDI and retail. You'd obviously be an affected party in that sense. Even last year it found a mention, but no real movement on that front. Does that disappoint you? And are you hopeful that at least this time around the government walks the talk on FDI?
You know, FDI not only in retail, but we also have to see the function of FDI in many other areas, including retail. We have been propagating FDI to be brought into insurance, needs to move up. In pension funds, if we are talking about infrastructure, where is this funding going to come from? Manufacturing, we've all spoken about that the scale needs to be up. India needs to play a larger role and as far as manufacturing is concerned in the GDP, which means defense manufacturing, which has been kept much on hold, must be also brought in the ambit. Of course, retail is one issue. We have been always saying that it's going to impact many things, including when we talk about the food inflation. So we are hoping, it was mentioned last year, we are hoping that the slew of FDI, including retail, defense, others must be looked into it, and that's what we call really the next phase of FDI reforms.
Let's also get in Chris Gopalakrishnan here. Do you expect the government to move forward on the FDI front? Really, because there's nothing that's stopping the government from a political point of view since the left is out of the government. Do you expect some kind of forward movement on that front now?
Yes, I expect continued opening of the market. This is required for two reasons. One, I believe the citizens require world-class services. It will also make sure that the Indian industry becomes better, more productive, more competitive, etc. Second, we have to integrate with the global economy. If Indian companies need access to global markets, we need to ensure that we reciprocate. So I strongly believe that the opening of the markets will continue to happen.
Right. Swati Piramal, what's stopping the government? And clearly a large section of the government itself believes that we need to move forward as far as allowing more FDI is concerned. Now there's no left in the government as well. What do you believe is stopping the government from moving forward on this front? It's just been really slow to move forward on opening up of some key sectors like insurance, retail, defense.
I think the government has been slower than what industry expected, not only in FDI but in a whole range of other areas. I'd just like to put in one of them, which is science and technology. Last year, China became the #1 patent producer in the world, and other countries like Korea, like Israel, like Taiwan, which are smaller than India, rapidly moving up that. And like a bhajan, every year I tell the finance minister, please do something about R&D. And though he has helped in some tax incentives, really no radical change has happened. And I saw David Cameron say that every patent filed in the UK, any income from that we would give tax-free. That's a radical move. So I think India needs to move radically in all fronts, including, of course, FDI.
Are you hopeful that this time around there will be some rapid movement, some radical movement that you're looking forward to? Like you've been saying, last two budgets have been really more of the same, nothing radical, nothing extraordinary. Do you believe this time around at least there will be some rapid strides taken by the government?
Yeah, on one hand I see the government trying to hold a steady ship, because they're rocked by so many things. On the other hand, I think this is, as Habil said, this is perhaps the best chance that they have to move forward, because that effect is going to be seen by the time the elections come around, and I think people will be happy seeing this momentum in the economy more than anything else. It's the economy which I think which will drive also votes. So I'm really hopeful. I think the finance minister is very pragmatic. He's very positive, and he would like to do things faster. I know he said so on, for example, on GST, and it is really not moving because everyone's not agreeing. All the states are not agreeing, but he would like to go faster, is what he's often said. So I'm very hopeful that he will take action in both his hands and just move very quickly.
Right. Mr. Korakiawala, we'll talk about GST in just a bit, but the point that you made earlier also about disinvestment, great time for the government to do something radical on that front. I know it's not a good time, but we're tapping the markets the way they've taken a knock over the last couple of weeks, but I'm sure things will improve, like you said. Do you expect that the government to then push forward on that front at least?
I think they made a beginning last year. And this is a good year for them to make a very significant impact on that front. Because that will bring some degree of not only the revenue for the government, which is so needed, but equally they would make some of this public sector far more competitive and alive. And simultaneously with this investment, I think government must bring about reform on public sector and bring them far greater degree of autonomy and allow them to perform with some degree of empowerment and autonomy, so that in future, whenever they do a disinvestment, the valuation they would get is much higher than they would get otherwise.
Right. Rajan Mittal, disinvestment will obviously help the government rake in more revenues. But what about controlling expenditure? It's time the government does something on phasing out subsidies. A whole host of subsidies. We've been talking about it for a while now. Do you think that the government needs to act on that front as well in order to control expenditure?
Well, I think so. Government is trying towards that. It has to be on a, let me say, balanced approach. You can't expect in one particular budget a radical approach. But yes, surely we have to move towards that. That balanced approach has to be met while the revenues generation is on one side, expenditure, and we have been talking about internal administrative reforms. So sure enough, government must look into this, because this is a larger implication over coming years. They must balance it out, but make sure that in the road towards the subsidies and other issues which are there must be kind of balanced it out, and approach must be there to slowly shave them off as we go along.
All right, gentlemen, hang in there. We're going to take a short break here and come right back to discuss the reforms on the taxation front. We've spoken about GST and DTC, but can the government act on that front? We're going to debate that in just a moment. Come right back.